What made you choose the move that became 70 million in 8 months?
The beginning of COVID, we didn't have any money. We bootstrapped the company. Nitrile glove were harder to copy. We were able to pre-sell our first shipment, put all my life saving on the line.
Take us back to day one of that pivot. What made you choose the move that became 70 million in 8 months?
I didn't really know that would happen. So I was in a market that was on fire. It was the beginning of COVID. We didn't have any money. We bootstrapped the company. Our business model was no longer viable. We couldn't buy and resell medical supplies. We were more of a service company. The mask, people were making a lot of money, but we didn't have any cash to gamble on bringing in some mask. And we've never imported gloves or a mask or anything. But I could see that success in mask was going to ripple in other medical supplies that were all in short demand. And that nitrile glove were harder to copy. And so I found that barrier to entry, and also knowing that because we were buying a medical supply for local health center, we knew that medical gloves were our best seller, right? We understood that product. I decided to look into it, and eventually we're able to pre-sell our first shipment, put all my life saving on the line. All my partners didn't want me to take that risk, and it was really on me. But turns out that it was reliable and it worked. And so we were able to get the first order in, make a name for ourselves, and eventually be invited on the request for a quote, and then expand the business.
So it's really all about betting on yourself, because that's what you did, right? Even when people around you weren't sure about the opportunity.
It's about risk sizing and also understanding risk perspective. For me, I'm an optimistic, a big risk taker. And so it is both my superpower and my kryptonite. I can take lots of risk, but I can also lose a lot. And I've lost plenty. And it's a roller coaster of massive success and massive failure. Understanding this about myself, I can use my sense of risk as a superpower if I can put it under wraps. When I failed to do that, I've been burned. When I've done it successfully, I've scaled and pivoted businesses. It's not the secret sauce of anything. There's a lot of luck and misfortune involved in entrepreneurship. But I think the common thread of successful entrepreneur has to do with a relation to risk that is not unidimensional. You think about risk as opportunity cost. You think about risk as not living on purpose. You think about risk across your lifespan. Take more meaningful action and commit to that level of risk you're comfortable with.
Definitely, because there's always a risk of never having taken that risk later on in your life. That's the worst risk of all.
For me, I lived all my life with a lot of intensity because I didn't want to compromise on the things important to me. If you look at your life bucket, it's unlikely you can be top 1% in every life bucket. You're going to all in your career, you're going to lose on your family life. I can be top in business and family, but then I let my health go away. I can be mediocre in my health. And it's been a struggle because I have 3 young kids. So it's more pressure at this age, knowing your limits by going above them a few times, asking yourself questions about why, what's my actual limit? What's the context of hitting that limit? Is that context still the same today? You can optimize your energy and your level of intensity so that you don't burn out all the time.
Yeah, definitely. It's always about optimization and balance, because without your health, you can't do the other things that you want to do.
I've learned that the hard way. Scaling a company, it's super stressful. I always forget the name in English. In French, we call that a zona. I think it's the shingles. Like when you have your skin burns. I was super stressed. And it's the first time I was working night and day, working full time in pharmaceutical sales for Lundbeck at the time, working nights and day. I went above and beyond in the craziness of COVID. And then my daughter born in January 2020 as well, paid off. But I kept doing that a few more times and it didn't pay off. Now I think about it in terms of sprinting. I need to sprint. I know that if I sprint for 30 days, I can sprint for 30 days without sacrificing my buckets. But if I sprint for 3 months, I start to lose decision quality. And the 4th month, I start to backpedal and sabotage myself with the grand scheme of things. It might look like hustling and progress, but over the year review, I would look at and identify that as a cause of failure.
Yeah, I think it's about knowing yourself. So you would know if pushing this limit is good because it helps your business and your health is still intact. But if you push any more than that, you really should stop at that point.
Yeah, that's what's so hard with entrepreneurship because it is a hero journey in the game of business. So you have rules of business and rules of heroic journey. So to hit the right, there's lots of narratives going on in our minds that pull triggers, and it's always in the gray zone. There's nothing black and white about any of this, because sometimes you should hustle and work hard
Mm-hmm.
and push through that sprint,
Yeah.
but other times you should not. It's a question of wisdom and maturity.
So at that pace, where did you feel the first strain? In the team, in the product, or in yourself?
All that, the shadow of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship as going on a boat on the ocean, right? You want to hit
Yeah.
that island, but then you're always visited by the same storm. And it's the storm of the shadow of the entrepreneurship, which is uncertainty, fear, and unworthiness. And it's a crescendo. So it starts with uncertainty and it can go all the way to unworthiness. And for me, it started that way, but I didn't see it that way. It started with a founder conflict. The founder conflict started because we all have our different internal narrative around what it meant to be worthy in our own eyes.
Yeah.
When I became an entrepreneur, I wanted to pay my parents' retirement. I wanted to have my kids grow with some financial freedom so that they don't grow poor like me. And for myself, I wanted to have as big of an impact as I could, positive impact as I could. When I scaled the business, I thought, okay, my kids are taken care, probably pay for my parents' retirement if I don't screw it up. And now I can have an impact. I wanted to have that impact through entrepreneurship because I hadn't pivoted and it grew so fast. I feel like there are still things to learn, but it was around money mostly my concern, to have that means, to have that power to go and have that impact. My partners were more around identity as business owners, which I didn't really. I've turned down many promotion because I'm not a big career guy. I get bored easily, but they have a different narrative. They wanted to have a business that stood the test of time, that was really strong. That became a cycle of conflict. I had an imposter syndrome that led to me becoming a serial entrepreneur. And on their side, they wanted to have an established business. So we took more risk. We bought more inventory. We tried to go outside business to government. We just tried to go to other distributors. So that little internal narrative storm that we couldn't decipher and really talk around led to the conflicts. I think it's important that once we are in a founder conflict, or if we are fearful of failure, we look inside of us and inside our partners and check in on their level of uncertainty, fear, their sense of self-worth, so that we can have these conversations. Because if you don't talk about the root of failure, you can treat all the symptoms you want, but you're never going to get out of it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think entrepreneurship, it's a very internal game. I always feel like when you choose your co-founders, you have to choose people who have worked on themselves, because I feel like otherwise you will have that problem of maybe you've worked on yourself more than they have, and then there would be that conflict. But of course, you don't really know at the start, right?
No, I like the idea of a hero journey because I think it's closer to what the truth of entrepreneurship is. So any hero journey is a journey of transformation. So if you start with that premise, it means that the co-founder you choose on day one will change. It has to, otherwise it's going to fail at the hero journey side of the. And so having that check-in time with your co-founder, talking about your shadows and getting that out there is even more important. Of course, you need value alignment, you need ownership, the responsibility. Anything needs to be fair and equitable, but you also need to see the other evolve. Just like in marriage, you need to see your partner evolve. You're both there for self-actualization and supporting each other. It's the same. You cannot just talk about the business, otherwise everything becomes too much over the waterline, and what's happening deeper is what actually steered the boats.
Yeah, definitely. I think your comparison to having a business partner and a real relationship, it's quite similar. It's like you're almost married to this person and you need to have those tough conversations and be really open with each other.
Yes, I've joined EO recently. I don't know if you know about that group.
Yeah, I do.
There are about 18,000. It's called an entrepreneur organization. It's very SEO optimized. So that group of people, I didn't really understood what I was getting into. I just knew, hey, this is my tribe. I was thinking about YPO, EO. I decided on EO. And I discovered that the core reason people stay in EO is because of the forum. And the forum revolves around the principle that you get to talk about the 5% you wouldn't talk about to anybody else. So it's a big need.
Yeah, I think as I grew older, I realized that when people tell you something that's really deep, you're not supposed to give advice. You just listen.
Yeah.
Unless they ask, you do not give the advice. That's something I had to learn the hard way.
It's part of life.
So can you share a moment when the data pointed one way, but your intuition pushed towards another?
When I sold my first business, I sold at the peak and at the valley. When I decided to leave in 2021, I mostly invested in a nanotechnology company. And so we have a patent. It was very different. And I decided to go there because I thought that after COVID, this technology was for air purification in a very positive way. And so I thought that the market would be ready for that. All the indicators were that past transaction was super high. We tried to go to a Series A because data showed us that evaluation was high. There was a lot of interest, lots of transaction, but we missed the window for by maybe 3 months. And so we never were able to raise the Series A, spending all our resources, and that doesn't work well.
Yeah.
I had to stop listening to the data and stop looking at, okay, how do we actually go to market with that and get some traction
Yeah.
so that we can really raise the on more than future promise and on actual value. And it led to a pivot. So we decided not to build air purifiers at all. We decided to narrow down on our unique value prop. I looked into niche markets, discovered that there's a bunch of market that has volatile organic compound, VOCs, issues, which is an organic pollutant that we could eliminate way better than anything else through the core of our tech. And that led to letter of intents for hundreds of millions. That led to design partners, early adopters, innovators wanting samples. And it really shifted the whole company's trajectory.
So it's really about knowing when to stop, quit the wrong thing towards the right thing, but not fully quit, pivoting, as you said. But it feels like you're kind of quitting the old thing. How do you get over that with the team and direct that? Yeah.
I'll be conceptual because it's not something technical. There's technical indicators, like we were struggling to get product market fit, but it's mostly an internal mastery skill. Growth shouts, but intuition whispers. If I were to just listen to the growth shouting about, hey, this air purification, the market is big, there's been transaction, I would have kept hitting that wall. At some point, I had to let the world burn. After a big warehouse fire brought me to a low point. You have to let the world burn and stop fighting all the fires and stop chasing growth because it's deafening at some point. And then you reconnect with the whispers of your intuition saying, hey, maybe there's something in nitrile glove. Maybe there's something in our core value prop. What is our core value prop? Our core value prop is that, we can be activated by visible light instead of UVC. What does that mean? Is there a market for that? Is that strong enough? Oh, maybe not. We produce 80 times more free radicals, so we can purify 80 times better. We thought we would go to market with as air purifiers. Turns out that the standards are, do you have a MERV filter? And then we cannot compete with a MERV filter. So that's not viable. The other one was a VOC, 76% first pass elimination of VOCs. That's game changing. Is there a market? We discovered the pool industry have trichloramine issues, oncology. There was a bunch. And I kind of followed the whisper. So you need to switch from hope to courage. You need to stop hoping for growth. You need to be aimlessly courageous for a while. Follow your whisper until you can see a path. And then you go back with the data. Then you go back with the business.
Definitely. So it's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And it's not all about the data, but it's a bit about the data as well.
Because you're playing a hero journey using a business game. There's a hero journey layer, and then there's a business layer. The whisper comes from your hero layer, and it manifests in the business realm. If you go on YouTube and you see a playbook, that's great, but it's not applicable. People are confused about the different stages. Even of a business, if you think about the ideation to seed to grow to plateau, exit, or whatever, it's very different games. You could start with a side hustle. You think, hey, I want to get more money, and that's fine. And you think you can do it through entrepreneurship, which is less fine because it is a different thing than a part-time job. You're going to be seduced by a play. You're going to try to make it happen. And then you're going to step into the realm of entrepreneurship without knowing it. And then it's uncertainty, fear, and unworthiness creeping into you. And you're not prepared for that. And so you're going to have fallacies, biases. You're going to try to stay true to the course you've taken. And so narratives are going to play in your head. And then if you succeed at the entrepreneurship phase, and maybe the product market fit and the scale-up phase, which requires a lot of transformation, you hit business plateaus. You're no longer as much of an entrepreneur as you're a business person now. It's more around system optimization. You've already transformed into a leader. You don't need that much internal narrative until you're ready to expand, sell, until you're ready for that next plateau. Entrepreneurship, business, there are seasons, and you have to understand in which season you are.
Yeah, because it's not like one linear kind of thing. It's like one mountain, and then you get to the next mountain, and you get stuck. Even people who become really successful, they get stuck because they need to reach another level, and then they have to get mentors. And I think a lot of people assume that if you're a super successful business owner, why do you need a mentor? But it makes a lot of sense because you have to kind of get to the next level.
You have to be careful because mentors are usually at the business stage, right? Because they've been successful. And they might put on you advices that would not fit the stage you're at. And I think that's
Yeah.
why a lot of entrepreneurs hate incubators and
Mm.
accelerators, because they're so focused on their recipe for operation that they
Yeah.
forget what it means to be in the entrepreneurial season of
Mm.
uncertainty, of that fear, and figuring it out. Is this actually viable? What can you optimize when you don't even have a sales yet? What can you
Yeah.
optimize when you don't have a system? You're a founder-led sales.
Mhm.
You'd have to understand that an advisory board is necessary, not black and
Mhm.
white, right? But it is necessary to minimize the business mistakes, not to prevent failure. If you are to
Uh-huh.
fail, you need to embrace your hero journey, actually listen to your whispers of intuition, and go out there and take the bets.
Yeah.
Understand your risk tolerance and take the
Mhm.
bets, and trust that you can make good decisions just as much as anybody else. When I scaled my first
Mhm.
business, we had a
Yeah.
fractional CEO because we knew we were too immature. He had built the business. He was super smart, but he was in COVID in a scale up doing 70 million in 8 months. You can be the best advisor. It doesn't mean you're
Yeah.
in the every business scenario. Doesn't it mean you remember what it is to be in the seed stage. And if you have your ego in the way,
Mhm.
you're going to want to advise too much and you're going to rob the founder of their story. And I think most failure happen because there's identity fusion with the business, but there's also
Yeah.
the fact that we dance at the strings of master, either the tyranny of data or the
Mhm.
tyranny of self-doubt, where we ask our advisory board to decide everything for us and we don't really take
Uh-huh.
ownership. But if 98% of first-time founders fail, we have to
Mhm.
learn how to fail. We have to learn how
Yeah.
to fail intuitively so that the next time we go in the arena, we've actually learned something.
Yeah, I've had so many founders on the podcast, and a few of them have failed their first business. And they always talk about how much it taught them. And like
Mhm.
this guy, he said his second business is informed fully from the failure of his first startup. And I feel like getting that data in and just going through the steps by yourself, it really teaches you a lot more than an advisor, or more than maybe even school can do that.
Yeah, details, right? You
Yeah.
should have an advisor. Bring him in when you start to have a business micro season.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to market with my new business.
Mhm.
Who can I have in my advisory board that would help me understand that new market I'm stepping into more than me? Okay,
Mhm.
then he has this little corner of mistake minimization, but I'm not going to let
Mhm.
him decide. I'm not going to let him
Yeah.
decide the mission, the vision. This is my personal, deeply take on how this should be created. And if it has to fail, it's going to fail under these terms. I'm going to reduce my likelihood of failure by
Yeah.
having the technical support. I'm going to own that failure if I fail.
Definitely. So you say readiness beats hustle. What does readiness look like for a founder?
I want to help founders because back in 2023, I came back from a business trip with my letter of intent for hundreds of millions. I had the
Uh-huh.
computer with dozens of leads. That's for my technology
Mhm.
company. And I thought, hey, this is it. I'm recreated my success. I'm not a fraud. I can now teach other and do it again and again and have that positive impact I wanted to
Yeah.
have. But then that's not what happened. What happened is my technical co-founders burnt out and quit.
Mm.
So at the finish line, we couldn't produce samples anymore. We were about to fail. I had to hustle
Yeah.
in a very fearful, reactive state. I didn't understand because I didn't understand
Mhm.
these three words of the shadow. In November, I had restructured the whole business. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay, we have new partnership. We're about to produce samples and this is going to be good. But then I had a phone call from my previous partner. And I thought maybe they've sold the rest of the inventory. I'm going to collect my second half of my exit. It's finally
Mhm.
good news. I felt really good. But what happened is he said, hey, Phil, I have a bad news. While the inventory was in a transition warehouse, the warehouse
Mhm.
burned. It wasn't insured. And that was a big blow. It broke me, honestly. And then it brought me into that journey
Mhm.
to stop caring so much about the business skills because I could see that I had more skills, more contacts, more knowledge, more money, more power, but I still
Yeah.
failed at this second venture. And
Um,
then I could see the root cause behind all of these good decision and bad decisions. I
yeah.
began to question what was happening below the waterline, below the operation, below this growth stage within the
Mhm.
founder. I'd done life coaching certification and a bunch of things because I'm passionate about psychology, philosophy. I also understood that it's only pieces of the puzzle because
Mhm.
founder readiness lives at the waterline of strategy
Yeah.
and in the deep waters just before therapy. It's not
Mhm.
therapy, it's just a bit higher than that, right?
Yeah.
So it's a chunk that if you don't see the inner
Mhm.
map,
Yeah.
well, you patch the symptoms with meditation, therapy,
Yeah.
journaling practices. But if you don't know where you're going and what's actually happening for your mission of being a founder, it has limited impact on yourself. It's just a relief. And so I really looked within me and within the science that I could find on that to try to map out that inner journey. How I define founder readiness is the mastery over that inner journey that leads to the capacity to sustain decision quality under pressure. If you can sustain that, decision quality is the first domino of failure. When it falls, it wobbles the whole structure. So if you have that inner strength, which is emotional mastery over the shadow of entrepreneurship, how do you deal with uncertainty, fear? Then it's decision quality. Do you understand your thinking patterns? Do you understand your biases? Do you understand your narratives? Do you understand who you are? Strategic thinking too. Then the third one is intuition mastery. And the last one is performance mastery. So I've mapped out 36 skills across 12 domain and 4 dimension. I created an assessment, the founder readiness assessment, that leads to an understanding of where your gap might be in these 4 dimensions and your potential founder archetype. 4 archetype that represents your inner narratives in some way. So maybe you're an achiever, maybe you're a navigator, a strategist, or the leader. And this is very useful to know because you have to have strength of all the archetypes from time to time. But if you're stuck at one, then it's very clear which gate you have to cross to unlock your potential. And your business is never going to outperform your potential. You'll need to. You're the ceiling of it, especially for the growth stage. So I'm more concerned about Series A. That's a very big entrepreneurial season. So that's what founder readiness is. And I'm trying to help by giving that free assessment. It's on our website, founderscompass.com. It's free. And then I'm doing a mastermind next year. And I'm trying to keep it as affordable as possible, where we're going to go across 12 skills. We're going to have peer support. And so I think it's going to change the game. And I'm very committed to making this as powerful as I can.
That's brilliant. When you talk about archetypes, it's not like you're one all the time, right?
No.
So even if you get one, you want to expand your skills to get the others as well.
Less of a psychometric assessment like the big 5. No, it's more around a snapshot of where you currently are as a diagnostic. It's like an employee development plan. But there's nothing for founders. If you work in a big company, you're going to get an assessment of yourself and a development plan. But for founders, it has to do more with the inner game. It didn't exist. I'm trying to create that. An achiever has to pass the self-regulation gate. A navigator has to pass the gate. The strategist has to go back to reconnecting with his intuition. It doesn't mean that any of them cannot be successful. Elon Musk has a strong achiever profile, in my opinion, and he's been super successful, but who knows what the other buckets of his life look like, right? And our mission is to build founders. Betting on luck, betting on your abnormal capacity works for a few people, but then most people are humans and they're going to hit the wall of their limits. And if they don't learn to navigate cycles of recovery and renewal, that entrepreneurial grit that they only understand through the lens of perseverance instead of adaptive intelligence will eventually break them because they're not going to be lucky all the time. And sometimes people get seduced by the idea because they see a Gary Vee or they see someone that has been super successful. I've been saying I could have done that. I've made a business, 70 million revenue. I've exited for now because I've done it. I'm a master of business. It's more complicated. There's many industries and layers. It's seducing in a simple narrative, and it is necessary from time to time to be the achiever. But the difference between the achiever and the leader is the leader hustles in a sprint format. It doesn't hustle endlessly until he burns out.
Yeah, that's going to be useful for founders. So if you had to do 0 to 70 million again, what would you approach differently this time?
So I would build my monuments. My cognitive preferences is conceptual, relational, and logic. I'm very weak at structure. So I'm very divergent in my thinking, and I don't have a lot of convergent strength. If you compare it, let's say, with a different lens of the EOS, I'm a very much a visionary, and I'm very weak, and I'm not super good. I can pull it off because I'm logic, but because I'm very weak in my structure, I'm not a good integrator. So understanding that about myself, my biggest pattern was that when I stepped into the shadow, I tried to think my way out of it by planning the next 10 years and 1 billion iteration possible of my plan. And then I would go to talk to CEOs and friends or advisors, or I try to do partnerships and things like that. And then I would hopefully cut with my logic. But before I realized these mechanisms in my mind, I would spiral and I would think, how come I'm so bad at making decisions? It's because I had an advisory board that I didn't even know existed in my mind. They were holding meetings at 3 a.m. and leaving me the next day to clean up the mess. So now that I understand that, the core superpower I gained was thinking in monuments. So when I create a business now, instead of going into the how, I take my time to really decide what cannot change. So when I walk into an entrepreneurial season, I know I have some stable ground I can step on and I can create the rest. And that stability for me changes my game. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, we're very conceptual.
Yeah.
It really helps. And so to clarifying your idea and then to think about how to express it in a market way. And that gives you a pivoting power and flexibility because just like when I pivoted my technology company, I knew my unique value prop was that's not going to change. It's easy to conceptualize technology. But in my case, in the knowledge work, the shadow of entrepreneurship is not going to change. That's one of my truth, right?
Yeah.
Inner journey is not going to change. That's another of my truth. And so as I build these blocks of stable ground, then I can decide I'm going to do a mastermind. I'm going to do a podcast. And then if that doesn't work out, I can adapt way faster. And in the world of AI, where knowledge is free from an operation standpoint, having that inner clarity then leads you to ask better questions and build in a more smart way instead of having things wobble when you make a change.
That makes a lot of sense because I think every business has something that does not change. And I
Yes.
think that is really helpful because entrepreneurship can be difficult to navigate if you don't have something to grip to,
Yes.
even when you pivot.
We've been so shallow about that. It started with Simon Sinek. Start with why. All right.
Yeah.
Start with why. Good. Why? Okay. And then figure out your why. Okay. That's another hard thing.
Yeah.
The who is another big question you should ask yourself. So I
Yeah.
like to think about the who, the why entrepreneurship, the why of the business, and then the how. If you kind of have that layered approach, you also need to be, there's an art and a science to that. The art part is that you keep discovering yourself through the journey. So you don't have to have everything figured out, but to have a sense of a bigger purpose than the little business that you have right now that goes beyond that makes you a founder less likely to break because you're less fused with the business. And you also have a better perspective that would allow you to have this rapid iteration cycles that is crucial at the earliest stage because you understand what success really is. It's not just about success of your business plan. It's more around the principle behind your business plan and behind the who you want to become through the process of entrepreneurship, why you chose entrepreneurship. If it's your fate, every fate has things that are terrible and blessings. So when I was in the shadows, sometimes I was playing with the exercise of, okay, maybe I should get a job now. But then I kept going back to, no, I'll be an entrepreneur next year again. It's my fate. I have to learn to navigate that shadow. I have to learn to accept it and to see it and navigate it more than tame it because it's never going to go away.
Entrepreneurship is a journey. Thank you, Phil, for coming on the pod and sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me.
If you want the full breakdown, it's on techforfounder.com.